create kind of like this more distilled, intense form of spirituality, uh, purification of the soul, and really frame the purpose of ihsan, frame the purpose of obedience, frame the purpose of staying away from haram, and even from the doubtful. And then we said, of course, that the purpose that he wrote the book for was really to explain what the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Kanzman Kunuzul Jannah. The treasure from the treasures of paradise is to say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So, because next semester we won't have halaqa on Thursday, we'll only have it on Tuesday. My goal is that we finish the first 15, because really the first 15 hikam deal with a important subject that we can all think about. And that is like, what are the things that come between us and a relationship with faith? What are the things that come between us and a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So we've gone through quite a few. And as you note, the first one was really talking about when he says, Min alamat i'timad ala al-amal nuqsan raja and wujud zalal. The first is how we look at our deeds, and if we are in an unhealthy way trusting in our actions. So min alamat i'timad ala al-amal. So the sign that I have trusted in my deeds instead of God, nuqsan raja and wujud zalal, is that when a test presents itself, I begin to waver. Because if I trusted in Allah correctly, then there's really no test. But if I've trusted in myself, I know that I'm innately weak. Like, I know that I have mistakes. I know that I have problems. And oftentimes what deceives people is their deeds. And as we said, every hikam has a lesson for two types of people. People that are, religiously adherent and passionate, like most of the time. And then the second would be people that are struggling with sin. So for each hikam, there's a lesson. So for the first one, you could say somebody that sees themselves, or they're doing a decent job, and then they allow their deeds to create a sense of delusion. Like, wow, I'm so good. Like, I'm so awesome. I'm slaying. So alhamdulillah, now I can treat people like garbage. And then for someone that's struggling, they allow their sin to weigh too heavy on them to the point that they despair of Allah. So the first person is someone who's deluded by their piety. The second person is defeated by their presumption that their deeds have a greater impact on them than Allah's maghfirah, than Allah's forgiveness. So he begins with that one. Then the second hikam, it deals with emergent religiosity. We talked about oftentimes, perhaps we've noticed people, like, as they become religious, they become rude, they become harsh. They lose some of the refinement that maybe they had even before, and then it begins to create problems. So he talks about iradatuka tajrid ma iqamati la iyaka fil asbabi min ash-shahwat al-khafiyya. He said, you want to peel away what God has given you. So sometimes when people become religious, we've seen like they want to leave their job, they want to pull away from success. Oh, I have to drop everything. But subhanAllah, if they would just think about this, and of course we're talking about in the permissible, like what they were doing that was permissible is what led them to God. Like they found Allah doing what they're doing. So why would you suddenly want to drop all of it? So oftentimes that impulsive reaction can create a lot of problems. And the reason he says it's a subtle desire is the person usually does it in the name of religion. And if you ever try to tell someone that what they're doing isn't religious and they assume it's religious, it's really difficult. It's like a hornet's nest. Trying to say like, stop, man. They're like, no, this is what I feel, blah, 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 blah. This is the haqq. It's okay. So the Sheikh, he said, iradatuka tajri, like you want to peel away what Allah has given you. And Sheikh al-Sharnubi, one of the great scholars, he said the sign of what God wants for you is that you're good at it. That you like it. It's what you're passionate about, So when people, I remember one day I was at a conference and someone came to one of the, she was a female speaker, and she said to her like, I want to be just like you. And she's like, no, you want to be just like what Allah made you for. Right? Like you can't be just like me. She didn't mean it like in a rude way or being condescending, but she was trying to say to her like, don't drop who you are. Like don't drop everything and try to be something that you're not. But this hikam forces us to nuance and be strategic about our religious growth, not simply just to cut everything out. And sometimes cutting everything out can mask a hidden desire. And I gave the example, I think this is like the 10,000th time. When I became Muslim, I was like, I'm gonna quit college. My father's like, what the hell are you trying to do? I was like, yeah, man, Islam, alhamdulillah, you know, like Islam, the haqq. Gonna hang out in the masjid and like eat biryani and like play basketball with the bros. And he was like, who's gonna pay for it? I was like, you are. He's like, nah, I ain't paying for that. Right? So that kind of religiosity can be benign, but it can also, people like fall into cults, people start to do weird stuff. You know, I received one time a convert, his mother called me and said he's sleeping on the floor. So I went to him, was like, why are you sleeping on the floor? He's like, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want us to have like any comfort in the dunya. I was like, I'll take your bed. Mattresses are expensive. Like, but what he thought he did was right. But that's what the Sheikh is saying here. Like, don't react impulsively. Be careful. And we talked about like how you can protect yourself from that is have a strong supporting cast, run ideas by people, you know, try to access, I know it's hard, but try to access people that you can like ask questions and like be in a situation where someone can offer you like informed advice. It's very important. Then he goes to the opposite. He says, وَإِرَادَتُكَ أسباب مع إقامتي لا إياك في التجريد انحطاط عن الأهمة العالية. And then he said the other side is like you want the causes of the world, like you want to try to make those causes. Where Allah has put you in a place where al-badharatu min al-iman, like simplicity is from iman, it's authentic hadith. Frugalness is from iman. Where Allah has sufficed you. أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبَدَهُ. The Quran says, isn't Allah sufficient enough for you? So maybe somebody is doing well, and this could be in so many different ways, right? The idea is like to quell your desires, because sometimes they can turn into problems. So maybe someone's in a good state spiritually, religiously, and their family's fine, and then like they start to wonder, like, is the grass really greener on the other side? لا تقرب هذه الشجرة فتكون من الظالمين. Don't eat from the tree. Everything's good here, don't worry. And then shaitan comes, ما نهيتكما ربكما عن هذه الشجرة إلا أن تكون من الملكين أو تكون من الخالدين. And shaitan comes to you and he's like, well, you know, you're not supposed to eat from the tree because you'll be like an angel. Don't you want to be an angel? You're already in Jannah, man. What do you want? You'll live forever. Who said you're going to die? So sometimes if we find ourselves in a place where we're materially, religiously, socially in somewhat of a normal equilibrium, it's never going to be perfect, and we start to think about like, yeah, wonder if I become an MMA fighter like 55, right? Yeah, my kids will love it. You get like hurt and injured, and then you can't see your kids anymore. Like stuff like this is what he's saying. So the first is be careful about what you leave. The second part is be careful about what you take in. So intake and outtake. And the lesson of this hikam is don't be impulsive either way. Like be on basira. Think about it strategically. It doesn't mean also the extreme, oh, I never leave anything. You know, of course, there are certain things that we have to get rid of in our lives that we'll talk about later. Nor does it mean that I don't have dreams and ambitions and like I don't try. But packed deeply in this wisdom is be strategic. Be smart. Don't be overly impulsive. Take it the right way. And then that takes us to the third one, where he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon him. سوابق الهمم لا تخرق الأسفل أقدار. This is the third thing that can come between us. So the first is deeds. The second is like not being nuanced in what I do and what I don't do. What I allow in and what I cut out. Not being smart. The third is being able to control my emotions. Like my passions. Sawabiqul himam. Meaning, just because like you're super passionate about something, la tukhriqu, it's not going to pierce aswar al-aqdar, the fortress of qada. Like you can't change anything. Like just because I'm passionate about it doesn't mean it's going to happen. So Allah says, وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌّ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah said, you love something that's bad for you. You hate something that's good for you. Allah knows you don't know. So I could be passionate about either getting something or what? Losing something. Again, there's a duality. And it's okay to be passionate, but not to the point where I question the wisdom of Allah. I may struggle with it. We gave some examples last week of even people in the Quran, like what? But like having the awareness that true power isn't in my hands. It's impossible. If you have babies, oh my God, you learn this one. Last night at like 1 o'clock in the morning, my daughter decided, I know you passionately want me to sleep, but I'm not sleeping. Right? Why won't you sleep? Allah yatawaffa al-anfus hina mawtiha. Allah causes things to sleep. So here, this is like frustrations. So sometimes, and also like a little bit of subtle narcissism. Like, oh, well, I think it's right, it must be right. No, not necessarily. I think it's wrong, it must be wrong. Unless there's a clear ruling, right? Of course, but we're talking here about like permissible stuff. Things that happen in our lives. So we went through those. The next is anxiety, stress, and depression. Those are things that can come between us and our relationship with God. And of course, this is linked to the one that came before it, because we get frustrated when things don't go our way. And maybe sometimes when things don't go our way, we begin to question, does God really care about me? And that's okay, that happens to everybody. You know, is God upset with me? Am I upset with God? Those things happen. So the Sheikh, he says, أَرِحْ نَفْسَكَ مِنَ التَّدْبِيرِ. Give yourself a break from thinking about the past. Like, give yourself a break. Give yourself a vacation. Don't allow what happened in the past to destroy you. And as a community also. And we're talking here about, you know, mistakes that people make. We're not talking about robbing banks and killing people. We're talking about the sins that probably every single one of us does. But some people, they're exposed. And then the reaction of the community is to destroy them. I've had people tell me their parents have told them, like, Allah will never forgive you. SubhanAllah, man. Like, can't say that. Or people have been ostracized for things that, like everyone else, falls sometimes into these areas. So also as a community, if people have made amends, if they've done their time, as we say, they've repented, they've come back, they're trying to do better, we should also not cause them stress about the past. There is a component to the Hikam that we're not talking about here that's very ministerial. Like, there's ministry in this. Like, how do you help people? How do you guide people? Like, so when someone comes here super passionate, they're super mad about something. When someone comes to you and they're like, you know, man, like, I'm just gonna leave everything and go for the deen, you know, for the deen. You remember, like, oh, you want to peel away things. So there's also like a ministerial component here that's very beautiful, very powerful. But here, when he says, أَرِحْ نَفْسَكَ مِنَ التَّدْبِيرِ, give yourself a freaking break from thinking about the past. Why? Because you can't change it. Even if it's something that strikes you and you're passionate about it, you can only live to rectify it. You can edit it by living for the future. But you can't go back and like edit it. And he says why? He says, فَمَا قَامَ بِهِ غَيْرُ. And فَمَا قَامَ بِهِ عَنْكَ غَيْرُ لَا تَقُمْ بِهِ لِنَفْسِكَ. Because what someone did for you in the past, you can't undo. And you couldn't do it for yourself. Like, things have been handled. And this addresses really 3 issues. Number 1 is the past and being either anxious, depressed about it. So in that situation, I should realize this was from Allah. Alhamdulillah, it was hard. Even if I've made mistakes, what can I learn from it? What can I be better about? If I look at my past, how can I improve on the thing I did wrong? That's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, and this is what we should tell people, أتبعي السيئة بالحسنة تمحوها. Follow a bad deed with a good deed, it will erase it. That's like the way that the Prophet ministers to his community. Sallallahu. Now we tell people, you did a bad deed, khalas. It's like done. How old are you? 20? Hey, your life's over, bro. I'm like, 20, man? Like, khalidina fiha abada. But the Prophet said, follow a bad deed with a good deed. So we're always thinking about living and editing through what we do in the future. But if I'm worried about the past, to the point that it compromises my inspiration to live for the future, that's a problem. No one should be made to feel that way. The second thing, yeah.
Is that why Musa alayhi salam, he says, Rabbi shrah li sadri, that oh God, expand my chest. Not just for the command of go see Pharaoh. You know, he could have prayed any prayer at that point, but maybe for him thinking back of all the trouble he got in, and that, you know, going to a place where he went through that trauma is hard. It constricts your heart. So an expansion of heart allows you to follow up a bad deed with a good deed without an expansion.
Yeah, like give me inshirah. Right? Open me. أَفَمَنْ شَرَحَ اللَّهُ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ فَهُوَ عَلَى نُورٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ. Allah says for the person that we expanded their heart to Islam. I mean, because to be a good Muslim, right, in many ways is about having emotional intelligence. Like Irij, I don't know Irij, but like I love Irij. Irij cares for me in the most platonic way possible, right? Because why? Because she's my Muslim sister. We work together. Like, yeah, I gotta take a shot for her if someone tries to do. You know what I mean? Like that's how you feel as a Muslim, right? You gotta be emotionally kind of intelligent to like have that relate. And I'm sure we all feel that generally by everybody in the room. We don't even know each other. So to be a Muslim is to like generally wish for the well-being of everybody in this room that I don't even know. Like that's like emotional intelligence. Why does the Prophet always tell the Sahaba, tell people who you love them? Why does he do that? Because they were known to be tough people. What is Quraysh from? From Qirsh, a shark. Because they were known to bite you. Or Qirsh also means money, because they were so material that they were known, like in New York, to be like, I ain't got time to say hi. Either, like in New York, I've never lived in a city where someone can run over you from behind while you're walking. Like taking a left turn, sometimes like they will come up and try to get in your left lane. You're like, yo, I got the right of way, dude. And you like kill some, like I've never seen a city like that. God bless it, it's a great city. But like people here are just not about it, right? So the Meccans were known to be extremely harsh people. That's why if you've ever been, you know there's a difference in how you feel in Medina and Mecca. You can see it. It's very different. It's a valley. Everybody's stuck together. So yeah, that's a good point. Like, expand me emotionally. Yes, ma'am.
But isn't that the challenge, right? To open your heart then and find the good in the people who are having difficulty welcoming you in?
Exactly. It's reciprocal. You've got to be able to like not allow the blame to cause me, for example, to fall into cynicism. So it's always a battle. So that's why the word, it's nice. Inshirah in Arabic means to expand something that was suffocated. So it was like, Allah says, La takun fi sadriq dayiq. You know, don't have dayiq in your sadr. He says to the Prophet, like, don't have a closed heart, a suffocated heart. Have a big chest. It's not easy. It's a battle. No one here should walk away thinking like, oh, I'm going to do this perfectly. Someone tried to run me over today. I was like, wow, you just ran me over. But most definitely. So having that big heart. So arih nafsaka min at-tadbir, you know, stop thinking about the past to the point that it suffocates you, it controls you, it destroys you. فَمَا قَامَ بِهِ غَيْرُكَ عَنْكَ, because what someone already did for you in the past, you can't do for yourself. وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. So you can see how all this plays into لَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. There's no power, there's no strength, nothing happens except Allah. So that's very beautiful, thank you. So, and thank you, Abdurrahim. So we talked about deeds, we talked about emergent religiosity, we talked about nuancing change and intake, we talked about aspirations and emotions, and now we talked about anxiety being stressed out about the past, or allowing the future to create a sense of fear, like what's behind the future. It's okay if that fear leads me to like rely on God and to create relationships with people that are meaningful. Like I need help perhaps, to do something. But if it becomes a consuming type of fear, this is what he's concerned with. Something that shuts me down. That's an unhealthy type of anxiety. The next is priorities. اجتهادك فيما ضمن لك وتقصيرك فيما طلب منك دليل عن انطماس البصيرة منك. He said, اجتهادك فيما ضمن لك, working hard towards what was promised you. وتقصيرك فيما طلب منك, and neglecting what you were commanded. Dalilun is an evidence is an evidence that you are short-sighted. انحطاط البصيرة منك. You can't see right. What he means is that your life is out of focus. And here in general, what he's getting at is that the heart is out of focus. And we explain this because sometimes people دليل على انطماس البصيرة منك is an evidence of your short-sightedness or your blindness. Because if I work hard for my dunya, but I neglect my hereafter, that's a sign of imbalance. But some people, when they read this, and we explained this before, they don't understand it. Say, oh, so it should be يعني تقصيرني فيما ضمن لي. So I should then neglect what's been guaranteed for me. واجتهدوا فيما طلب مني. Then I should work hard in what I've been commanded. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is work hard for both. So اجتهادك فيما ضمن لك. Work hard on what's been guaranteed for you. Because we've been commanded to work. We talked about it. أخذ بالأسباب من علامات الإيمان. As Muslims, we believe like we have to take steps and precautions and be strategic, but we leave the result to God. At the same time, we should also work equally hard for our hereafter. So doing both would be dalil ala sihati basiratik, would be an evidence that you're seeing correctly. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة. One time Sayyidina, the verse of the Quran says, oh, our Lord, give us good in this life and good in the hereafter. So we shouldn't neglect, and you get the feeling as we go through these kind of euphemisms, the balance that's there. There's always a sense of balance. In the time of Umar ibn Khattab, he came to the masjid and there were these guys. He noticed they were there for a few weeks, these young men. So finally he went to them and he said, like, what do you do? They're like, yeah, we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we draw near to Allah, we're very pious, we turned away from the dunya, turned away from the material, the temporal world, we're fleeing to God. He said, no, that's great, but where do you work? And they said, no, we just we're just about it. Temporal life, the life's nothing but a mirage. Just gotta keep going. So he got a stick and he said, if you don't go and work, I'm gonna beat you. And he kicked him out of the, Umar ibn Khattab kicked people out of the masjid. Why? Because there's an imbalance. There's an imbalance. So what the Sheikh is saying here is work for both. And this plays out sometimes in bad ways, like you see relationships where people will justify neglecting their responsibilities in a relationship in the name of religion. You see this a lot. Once, I think I told you, there was a Sheikh in Egypt, a Sufi scholar, and this guy came to him and he said, I traveled so many hours to see you, Sidi. I traveled so many hours just to drink from your blessed, illuminate, countenance. And Sheikh is like, what the heck is this guy talking about? I teach Quran, man. He's like, did you do your Quran lesson? He's like, no, I'm just here to see you, vibe off you. I was like, are we in Santa Cruz? And then the Sheikh, he said, why did you come here? He said, mashallah, we had a break from school, so instead of going to see my parents, I came to see you. The Sheikh, he said, Wallahi, I appreciate the fact that you came to see me, but it's much better if you visit your parents. Like there's more barakah, there's more khair, there's more light in your parents than there's in me. So what he was trying to tell him is like, your priorities are off, man. But he was using like his religious kind of battery of understanding to perhaps neglect situations. I've seen people who would like go and travel for like 1 year and neglect their wife. Like, subhanAllah, man. Like go out, you know, and they're like, yeah, this is what the religion commands. The religion didn't command this of you. قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِكُمْ نَارًا. Save yourself and your family from hellfire. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. Didn't think about people. So oftentimes when people, if we invert this, they have taqseer in the dunya, even though they work hard for akhirah. They have a shortcoming in this world, even though they may be working hard for the hereafter, but they neglect their responsibilities. And that goes back to the one about peeling away what God has given you. And oftentimes as we get older, we begin to realize that the most important da'wah we can make, and it sounds cliche, is to our families. In the sense of not da'wah like, oh, family, be obedient. No, just like being there, being present, being a good person, being a good friend. So the Sheikh is saying, اجتهادك فيما ضمن لك, working hard for what was guaranteed for you. وتقصيرك فيما طلب منك, and having this kind of shortcoming in what was commanded of you. دليل عن انطماس البصيرة منك, is a sign that you're short-sighted. Your vision's off. Inshallah, I'm actually recording this from my school, Swiss. We're doing it with like images, man. So like you'll see someone walking out of focus. Because that's like what he's trying to get at. That there's a lack of balance. No. And then the sixth was like when our du'as aren't answered. So unfortunately, and I've been there, we all been there, like we react to this in the wrong way. Like, man, my dua wasn't answered, God hates me. Like, hashtag, you ain't that important. Like, this is not a level playing field. Like, my knowledge and God's knowledge, there's no mukhalifatul lil hawadith. لم يكن له كفوا أحد. So the Sheikh, he says, لا يكون تأخر عطاء مع الحاء في الدعاء. Don't allow the delay in the gift, meaning the gift that you've been asking for, coupled with like passionate supplication. موجب ليأسك. Don't allow that to be a cause of your despair. يأسك في الله. Your despair in Allah. Or your despair in your relationship with Allah. Because shaitan will come to you. Yeah, see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not answering your dua. Allah hates you. I knew Allah hated me, okay. Like, it's tough. I've been there. We all been there. Mujib al-ya'sik. Don't allow this to become a cause of your despair. فَهُوَ الضَّامِنَ لَكَ الْإِجَابَةِ. Because Allah promised to answer your dua. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ بِدْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Quran says, pray to me, I'll answer you in this life or the next. And as we won't talk about it because it's later on, but the Hikam, he talks about the idea of reaching a relationship with God that's so intimate that not getting is like getting. في منعه إعطاء. In not giving you was the answer to your dua. And if we think about it, my beautiful daughter, I have a lot of daughter stories these days. She loves avocado, mashallah. It's the only thing she can eat is avocado. So, you know, if I don't give her avocado and I give her milk, she gets mad. But milk has the iron that she needs. So I know she doesn't know. So it's like, are we like that with dua? Oh, I didn't give my avocado. Allah hates me. Or is it like, maybe there's no iron in that dua. Maybe that's not what's good for me. Wallahu ya'lam wa antum la ta'lamun. Allah knows and you don't know. It's hard. It's not easy to be in that situation. That's why one of the core components of Islam is community. Like sometimes we have to help each other shoulder that our du'as haven't been accepted. Especially like now when people are asking, can you write a recommendation for a graduate school? And then, they contact you. Man, I didn't get into graduate school. Like, I can't be like, well, there's no iron in that graduate school. No, you want to support them, right? You want to keep them strong. Right? So even in the face of Allah's plan, we are still commanded to comfort each other because sometimes His plan is not easy. وَهُوَ قَاهِرُ فَوْقَ عِبَادِهِ هُوَ الْقَهَّارُ. He's the all-powerful. But the Sheikh is saying, don't allow that to cause you to despair. Don't just want avocado. Don't get mad. فَهُوَ ضَامِنَ لَكَ الْإِجَابَةِ. Because God promised you, He guaranteed for you He would answer you. فِي مَا يَخْتَارُهُ لِنَفْسِهِ. فِي مَا يَخْتَارُهُ لَكَ. What He chose for you. لَا مَا تَخْتَارُهُ لِنَفْسِكَ. Not what you chose for yourself. وَفِي الْوَقْتِ الَّذِي يُرِيدُ لَا فِي وَقْتِ الَّذِي تُرِيدُ. In a time that He wants, not the time you want. So sometimes even dua not being answered can be a means of keeping us away from God. Whereas in reality, it may be best for us. The next is I'm trying to phrase this in a way that's appropriate and clarifies these things, is, not looking for utility in my relationship with Allah. Like sometimes when I meet Muslims who have left Islam, may Allah protect us, someone has got into their head like, Islam says if you do this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Like, no, it's not. I'm like, what? I was like, yeah, just because you do this doesn't mean it's going to happen. They're like, oh, then why did I leave? I was like, I don't know, you tell me. And then I start to think, but and we're going to talk about this today, what we're exposed to is what animates our hearts. And oftentimes it's not their fault. Like they've been exposed to really bad content. Fake news. It's like fake Islam news. And here the Sheikh, he says, لا يشككنك في الوعد عدم وقوع الموعود. Don't allow yourself to doubt the promise of Allah, just because what you thought had to happen didn't happen. Like, if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, whoever does this many good deeds, this will happen. Not necessarily. Like, don't get caught up in that. Just worship. Don't think about those things. And we're going to get into this in a minute. The point he's trying to say is don't just think about your own personal utility or spiritual utility in worship. Because that brings in the selfishness. Like trust. So if the first one was about trusting in deeds, this is about trusting my feelings. Whereas, alhamdulillah, Allah guided us to worship Him, وَكَفَى بِهِ نِعْمَةً. People worship things. It's in our nature. Allah blessed us to worship Allah. So sufficient, alhamdulillah, it's a blessing. وَإِن تَعَيَّنَ زَمَنُ لِأَلَّا يَكُونَ ذَلِكَ قَدْحًا فِي بَصِيرَتِكَ. Because that's a sign that your vision is not necessarily there. وَإِخْمَادٌ لِنُورِ بِصَرِيرَتِكَ. And that the light that exists in your relationship with Allah is faded. It's tough wording, man. Yes, sir.
It sounds like what you're trying to say is Islam shouldn't be approached as transactional in terms of I do this, you get this. It's monetary. But
yeah, I shouldn't approach it as transactional.
But in terms of, assessing quantity sometimes, I think we have so much in our tradition about this is the number of rewards, multiplied 8 times, 1,000 times, a night of 1,000. You know what I mean? It's
it's all rhetoric. Night of 1,000 months, I hear people say this all the time. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, but that's what I'm going. It's it seems like in the tradition, it's just filled with that kind of rhetoric. And I think a lot of people take that literally. It's man, if I do this, that's how much barakah I get. And it's, I guess, motivational for some people, but it sounds like it's not really meant to be taken that way.
Yeah, because in Arabic, numbers are used for what's called mubalagha, to show infinite, an infinite thing. So, Laylatul Qadri khayru min alfi shahr, right? Suratul Qadr, right? Hamdulillah. The night of Qadr is better than 1,000 months. I've seen people actually say like that is this many days, this many hours, this many seconds. You know, on the minbar, and I'm like, no, man, it doesn't mean that, right? And then you see people like, it does motivate people, but there's other people like, it's like transactional. Like I'm at the ATM. Whereas everybody, as far as I know, most people here, when someone gets married, what do you say? Even if you're Daisy, man, even if you're white from Oklahoma, what do you say? Alf Mabruk. Do you mean 1,000 Mabrooks? It's in the language. Alf Mabruk doesn't mean like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 996. Shortchanged. It means bila nihaya. So, you know, of course there are certain things that the Prophet said, like if you say this many times after Salah, this will happen. That's not what he's getting at. That's what the Prophet told us, that's the haqq. But this kind of transactional approach or utilitarian approach to worship is a problem, because then I'm expecting something now. Like, I pray, why isn't my life good? I don't know. Maybe it is good. Maybe you don't know. Right? Islam doesn't say if you worship. We're not the prosperity gospel that Joel Osteen pushes. Right? Like everything's great. Everything's wonderful until there was a flood in Houston, and I didn't let people in my church because everything's great. Thank you, poor people. Right? But it's strange, like, we are very much the product of the society around us. And one of the products of a capitalist society, it's interesting that the gospel of prosperity is kind of born in Babylon. We don't believe in that. I may pray, I may fast, and still Allah may test me. It is what it is. Ana ma'Allah. So he's saying, and sometimes this is a problem we teach people. We say like, yeah, you know, if you're a good Muslim, life will be great. Ow. I don't know that. What would you say to Ayub? Sayyidina Ayub, like, he had a hard time. Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, nobody was tested more than me. So what he's getting at is even a deeper issue. It's not only just like, do this, but the life also is not necessarily going to be a bowl of cherries. But فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ. And that's why the seerah, one of the things that we learn in the seerah, which should be talked about, is how to shoulder success, how to shoulder difficulty, how to shoulder loss, how to shoulder the acquisition of things. Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his life in Mecca is extremely difficult. Then in Medina, things become slowly easier, but still, he keeps his worship. His worship isn't impacted by the currents of time. Time is subservient to the Lord of who we worship. Yes, ma'am?
So like how, I remember like, you know that verse in the Quran, this is like, if you won't play bad, like if you're like kind, you get someone who's kind, all these things, like isn't that like transactional though?
That's a good question. This verse, this verse. انت فتحت الباب عظيم. This verse doesn't mean that, nor does it mean only virgins can marry virgins. The translation is so bad. In Surah An-Nur, الطيب للطيبات, الزاني لا ينكح إلا زانية. You know, an adulterous man will only marry an adulterous woman. That has nothing to do with two things. First of all, it doesn't mean only virgins can marry virgins and only people that have lost their virginity can marry people who haven't lost their virginity. I get this call once a week. People are like, we're getting married tonight. Like, wow, it's like, you waited till now. It's kind of late. What this verse is talking about is that the Sahaba, there was a time when they were so poor, they could only afford to marry sex workers. Would be the best way I could phrase it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not want the character of the fledgling prophet's community to be corrupted by being around criminality. So, الزاني لا ينكح إلا زانية. That's what the verse means. And الطيب للطيب means the believer for the believer. That's why in the time of Umar al-Khattab, Muslim men were forbidden to marry non-Muslim women. What? And that's why I agree with that opinion now. Because we're throwing women under the bus. So sister is struggling to get married, and here comes Muhammad with, some nice woman he met. It's like 30, 40 women in the community don't have husbands. So Sayyidina Umar, he forbade the Sahaba from marrying non-Muslim women at that time because he said it's going to harm the believing women. فَالطَّيِّبْ لِلطَّيِّبْ. That's the meaning of it. It has nothing to do also with utility. Just like, if you're going to, and many people say that the verse about, as I said earlier, is about like marrying sex workers. That's all the Sahaba were poor. So they're trying to preserve their chastity, the men and women, but they couldn't afford the mahar to marry. And then people made it almost impossible. Before all the marriage laws came down, the non-Muslims made it impossible for them to marry good people, quote unquote. So that's why this verse is there. Yeah. It's not about utility. That's a good question though. So 2 issues that we mentioned. Any other questions about that verse before we move on? You got it? Fahimti?
Yeah, but okay, I just have a follow-up.
That's
But
okay.
I feel like there is, like, I've heard it in the Quran before where it says, like, if you are, like, pious and you do what you need to do, then you're going to have, like, an easy life, or we're going to protect you from...
Surah An-Nur, Hayatan Tayyibah.
Hayatan Tayyibah.
Yeah, this is talking about Jannah.
Oh.
Hayatan Tayyibah is Jannah,
Okay.
not dunya. Allah says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ. We're going to test you. Because the test brings out the munafiq. The test brings out, my wife and I, before we got married, we never got into a fight, mashallah. We knew each other for 2 years. I'm very anti, I don't like to fight. Neither does she, mashallah. So we went to the marriage counselor, which I recommend everybody should do. It's very important. We went to a real marriage counselor also, right? Not the shady tree one. And we sat down and we were like, yeah, it's such a great relationship. Alhamdulillah, this. I was like, yeah, we've never gotten a fight. And she said, what? I was like, yeah, isn't it amazing? Like, we never had a fight. And she's like, that's not good. Because the fight will bring out who you are. So when someone comes to their house like, yeah, this guy came to my house, this girl came to my house, they were so amazing. Of course they were. Like, how you gonna show up for the first time? Like in some Dickies and a t-shirt? Yo, what's up? How you doing? Yeah. Yo, hand me that cable remote right there. Like, that's not gonna be the first day. It's like, you gotta let it work itself out. So tests have blessings in them also. Right? So the verse, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَهُمْ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً. Those who believe and do good deeds, will grant them a good life. A good life here means, because al-hayat usually in the Quran means Jannah. الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ in Surah Al-Mulk means death. Death, but death here means dunya. وَالْحَيَاةَ آخِرَةً. So to give them but then there are so many other verses in the Quran, right, that say, we're going to test you, life needs resilience, and may Allah help us. It's not easy. I'm by no way saying like, oh wow, it's simple, it's easy on paper. Got it? Yeah, and don't be shy. Ask away, alhamdulillah. Yes, ma'am.
So just to follow up to your question as well, you mentioned like sex workers, right? So does that mean, and even like when the Quran mentions like bond women and things like that, does that mean like Islam was like never accessible to them? Like where they weren't?
The verse was later abrogated. So later on it was allowed. But in the beginning, this is like when the community is new, there's a concern that the character of the community, because I can say this, like when I converted, if I went back to my old neighborhood where I was before I converted, I would never be a good Muslim. I would have got around my friends. So the idea is we want to pull you away from criminality, we want to pull you away from bad associations, bad environments in the beginning. Then later on there, it says, ankihu, marry whoever you want. So the bigger issue here is not quote unquote sex workers, it's like sex workers, whoever is in that kind of bad life. But in particular, they were trying to marry sex workers because that's who they could afford to marry. And the Quran said no. Because it's going to come with an environment that's going to question and challenge you like when the Prophet said, don't go to raves. كنت نهيتكم عن زيارة. Why? Because they used to worship those graves. Then after their faith was strong, go ألا تزوروها, go visit graves. So later on they could marry who they wanted. So it wasn't about like social stratification. It was about creating. We have to appreciate that the faith intelligence of the Sahaba was almost nil. They had no spiritual tradition outside of like their pagan gods that they worship, but they didn't have like any formalized religious things that they did. So this was a lot for them to handle. So even how alcohol is slowly prohibited, right? The idea is, how do you build a community? How do you strengthen them? So it was more about that and not like keeping people away. And of course, the majority of the Prophet's followers in Mecca are slaves. And there's a difference between, in that time, a slave and a sex worker. A slave would be someone that was in bondage, right? A sex worker is someone who's free and selling themselves for sex. Two different kind of social roles. Any other questions? Good questions, mashallah. The next one, inshallah, is hardships. Sometimes hardships come between us and God and they rock us. So the Sheikh, he says, إِذَا فَتَحَ لَكَ وَجْهَةً مِنَ التَّعَرُّفِ فَلَا تُبَالِي مَعَهَا إِنْ قَلَّ عَمَلُكِ. You know, if you get inflicted by hardship or test or trial, and you are unable to maintain the high level of worship that you had before, don't let it get to you. And we mentioned last time the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said that somebody who's being afflicted or tested, and that keeps them genuinely from being able to worship the way that they used to worship before, they will be rewarded as though they were still doing it. Because innamal a'malu binniyat, actions are by the intentions. فَإِنَّهُ مَا فَتَحَ لَكَ إِلَّا وَهُوَ يُرِيدُ أَن يَتَعَرَّفَ عَلَيْكَ إِلَيْكَ. You know, that this is an opportunity for God to show you his imminence. And that could have two meanings. Number one, the test and the removal of the test. And number two is that because my deeds are going to bring blessings, right? But we believe in our tradition that patience has an infinite number of blessings. So Allah has tested me, and if I'm patient through that test, inshallah, then I will be rewarded infinitely. إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرُهُم بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. So Allah has manifested his mercy to me through the test, even though it's hard, in the hereafter. And I think we have one more, and then we'll get on to the new ones. Yeah, that's it. So now we reach the ninth one. And the ninth hikam deals with a number of things. And that is, it addresses our ahwal. Af'al are the states of our actions. How I act is my af'al, my a'mal. But how I feel is my ahwal, hal. So we say, af'alu qulub ahwal. So like the emotions that I have, what moves me. So the Sheikh, he touches on this. He says, rahimahullah, tanawwa'at ajnasul a'mali. The different and varied type of actions that a person does, li tanawwu'i waridatil ahwal, is due to the different type of states. It's not easy to translate this, but what he's getting at is what you allow into your heart and into your mind is going to create the varied type of actions that you have in your life. So in the beginning, you think about the logic of this hikam. What was the first wisdom talking about? The physical world, actions. Now what is it talking about? Through test, he talked about test, he talked about, you know, attitudes, philosophy, he talked about so many things, and now he's talking about what? The actions inside, what's called al-zahir. The zahir are the out, the bawatin are the inside. How I feel inside, how do I feel about God? How do I feel about things around me? What are my emotions? The ahwal. So he said, the different types of things that go into, that we intake through our five senses is what he's getting at. Through what we learn is going to impact how we act. So the varied actions are due to the variant ahwal, states. Ahwal translated as like states. What impacts that? My friends. And who's around me? My virtual friends also. Number two, what am I learning? What am I listening to? You know, I had this friend, subhanAllah, he called me, it's like a few years ago, and he's like, man, I'm just like really depressed. This is my boy, right? So we can kick it like that. And he was like, I'm depressed, man. I feel so bad, like this and this. I was like, man, I'm sorry, you know. And then as we continued to talk, because I know him, I began to realize like, it's kind of superficial. So I said, hey man, show me your playlist. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, show me like your playlist on your phone. And it was all like super freaking sad love songs and stuff, man. And then I said to him like, maybe it's why you feel this way. You know, like that's what's you're intaking. Doesn't mean that super sad love songs don't have a place in our life. Of course they do, but like my man was going hard. He was really going hard. So what the Sheikh is saying is, if you want to understand your actions, then understand your heart. If you want to understand your heart, then look what's coming into you. And our teachers used to say that the five senses are like doors to a house. And how many people would just leave like those doors open, like all the time? So the idea here is like, not only about like what we consume, but then overconsumption, not being disciplined, not having a sense of responsibility. At a higher level, he's saying like, what's haram, try to limit it. What's disliked, try to limit it. What pushes like certain kind of ideas, try to limit it. So that you can control and better your ahwa. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, ألا وإن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله. In the body there's a piece of flesh. If it's sound, the whole body's sound. If it's corrupted, the whole body's corrupted. It's the heart. Also on a positive note, you know, let me be deliberate in what I intake. Like I shouldn't just see this as like me against the world, like Pac. No, like there's also a positive to this. Like I have the ability, bi'ithnillah, to furnish around me a life of change. So like, let me do that. Let me try to be around positive influences. Let me try to engage in things that encourage me and inspire me. And that's why they said one of the best things to strengthen your ahwal and your a'mal is to think on the names of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. To think about his names. The most merciful, the mighty, the forbearant and forgiving. Because the ahwal da'iman tantaqil. Because we believe the ahwal are not something that's permanent. Just like actions aren't permanent, we believe that the states of our heart aren't permanent. So there's always this flux. So for each situation, there's the name of God that will fit that situation. For example, if I got like this awesome super promotion, what name of God could I use to like reflect at that moment to bring my hal in line with qada and my actions? Who can give me one? It can be in English too. Ar-Razaq. Okay, what else? Think of another scenario. If we had time, we're gonna do scenarios, but we don't have time. You know, I feel like I'm about to break, man. I'm at that last breaking point. What name of Allah could I think of? Huh? Al-Wudud, the loving, super loving. Al-Mu'een, the one that helps you. So now, the Sheikh beautifully, when he said, Tanawwu'at al-ahwal, Tanawwu'at ajnas al-a'mali tanawwa'i أجناس واردة الأحوال. I'm getting old, forgetting that. Subhanallah, Ya Alim Alimni. See, there you go. I just gave you an example. I forgot to ask, oh, the one who knows, teach me. So for every moment, there's the name of Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what I love about this hikam is it creates a sense of individual responsibility. Who's going to contextualize it? The Sheikh, the Imam, the Tariqah, the group. Who's going to contextualize this for you? You. And this creates a very intimate relationship between you and Allah. That every moment there's a name I can inject here. Every moment there's an attribute of Allah that I can inject here. That allows me to bring my hal and my amal with the reality that I'm dealing with. And now if you go back to the Quran, you can appreciate, like, you know, when people are facing success or hardship and they will mention the name of Allah. That's what they're contextualizing. And that's why the du'as of the Quran, this is very nice, are a reflection of the ahwal of the awliya. The dua in the Quran is not just a dua. It's a reflection of the state of the pious people. Like where they are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What he's going to do now for the rest until we finish the last one, I think we'll meet after Turkey Day, a week after Di Kurumi. For those who celebrate, for those who want to not celebrate it, I'm on your team. But for those who do, may Allah bless you. Nobody's like calling you out or putting you on blast. Don't feel guilty. I'll still eat some turkey though. But the Sheikh, he's now going to talk about what can we do to work on our hal. So at the beginning, he kind of notes, like, what are the challenges that come between you and God? And now he centers, like, the hal as being the key, the heart. So what are some things that we can work on to make sure that our inner states are strong? And we'll just mention a few, and then we'll finish. He says, Al-a'malu. This is one of the most beautiful ones in the whole book. He says, Al-a'malu suratun qa'ima. Your actions are empty mannequins. Goodness gracious. Wa arwahuha. And the spirit of life in those mannequins. Wujudu sirr al-ikhlasi fiha. Is the spirit of sincerity inside them. So he's like framing like empty bodies. Like actions are like empty bodies. And the life of that action is your ikhlas, your sincerity. Prophet, as we all know, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, you know, innamal a'malu binniyat. Actions are because of their intentions. Righteous actions are because of their intentions. And we hear this like, niyatul mu'min khayru min amali. You know, the niyyah of a believer is better than his or her amal actions. But how do you have ikhlas? Like, I remember one time I went to St. Louis to visit Sheikh Muhammad Noor, hafidhullah. I came from Oklahoma. He used to teach hadith. So we would drive to his hadith lectures from Oklahoma to St. Louis, man. And I went up to him. I was like 21 years old. I said, yes, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Sheikh, I have like a really serious question. How do you get ikhlas? Like, how do you have sincerity? And he said to me, you know, sincerity is something that is acquired. Sincerity isn't something that just like happens. And there may be moments that it happens, but usually, like, it's the outcome of a deliberate process. So I was too young to appreciate that at that time, you know. But then I asked another sheikh from Webb. Anyone know where Webb is? Webb is Yemen. Sheikh Abdullah Hamoud. And Sheikh Abdullah Hamoud, mashallah. I said to him, man, how do you get ikhlas? This is when I was like 33, almost 10 years later. He said, وَإِنَّ لَكُمْ فِي الْأَنْعَامِ لَعِبَرَةً. He just read a verse of Quran that says, indeed, in cows for you there is a lesson. نُسْقِيكُم مِّمَّا فِي بُطُونِهَا. We cause drink to come from the belly of the cow. بَيْنَ فَرْث وَالدَّمْ. between feces and blood, labanan khalisan, is the same word, yani laban khalis, pure laban, like ikhlas. So I said, what? He was like, yes, you have to go through the blood and feces of life to be pure, just like milk has to go through the blood and feces of a cow. I was like, Sheikh, you got bars, Sheikh. Wow, Sheikh. SubhanAllah, Sheikh, I'm good. Peace out. But what he meant to say is like the whole process of life is a means of being sincere. And it takes time. And all of us are sincere to a certain degree also. Imam al-Ghazali brilliantly wrote, you know, first of all, pure ikhlas is only for the prophets and the malaika. So you hear people like they'll write questions like, you know, like I did this deed, but like I don't think it was like complete for Allah. And then like it's scary because shaitan is working on him. You know, shaitan's trying to get at him. Not through sin, but through what? Through religion. One of the most trickiest doors of shaitan is religion. Because again, I think I'm safe. We let our guard down when it comes to religion. So they're like, I didn't do this like perfectly for Allah. Like I you know, there's this one thing I did it for that. It's like, it's okay, man, don't worry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not commanding us to be 100% pure. That's impossible. But He's commanding us to try to be sincere. So how do we achieve ikhlas? Number one is to learn, and we're going to talk about this later, take lessons from the world around us and try to see God into that. Number two is a strong supporting cast. People around us that talk about sincerity. People that encourage us. People that say like, inshallah, you got this, alhamdulillah. The third is to think about death. Because subhanAllah, nothing makes a person more sincere than death. If I know that my time is limited, I'm gonna like make sure I put good quality. You ever been at work and they're like, you got the whole day to do the assignment? I always screw that one up. Or like, by lunch, I need this done. Yo, I had that joint top, ready to go. Because limited time, right, creates that hyper focus. أكثر ذكر هذه ملذات. You know, the Prophet said, think about death. It destroys false hope. And we know that death is so important. It's mentioned in in the hereafter, almost every page of the Quran. SubhanAllah is Maliki Yawmiddin wa bil akhirati hum yuqinun. Every page. So the first is sincerity. This, as far as working on the hal. The second is avoiding unhealthy fame and preparing ourselves. So the Sheikh, he says, أدفن وجودك في أرض الخمول. Ya Allah, can you imagine nowadays with all this stuff happening in the world? If someone said this, people would have them committed to the hospital. أدفن وجودك في أرض الخمول means في أرض الخمول, bury yourself in an obscure land. Wujudak doesn't mean necessarily you physically, how you see yourself. Like your sam'ah, meaning don't buy likes. You know what I'm saying? Like don't be out there all the time. Take time to be alone with yourself. Take time to dig, and the word he uses for ard is a fertile, deep, fertile land, because when you dig something deep, what happens there? It grows. One of the beautiful things in the Quran you find is that the greatest successes of people tend to happen when they're alone with God. He's not saying also don't use filters or something. He's not saying that, but he's saying make sure you take time out to dig yourself deep sometimes and work on yourself, develop yourself, grow. فَمَا نَبَتَ, because in Arabic is backwards, but فَمَا نَبَتَ مِمَّا لَا يُدْفَنْ means because what wasn't buried won't grow. وَلَمْ يُتِمْ نَتَائِجُ, and it won't be ripe. So أدفن وجودك في أرض الخمول, take some time out to not be out there. to not worry about. And now we live, especially with the corporate kind of push behind how this world is, people are constantly compelled to be out there. He's saying, no, sometimes pull back, work on yourself, develop yourself, give time to your own personal growth. فَمَا نَبَتَ مِمْ لَمْ يُدْفَنْ. There's also something beautiful here, man. What does dafn mean? Dafn means to bury the dead. So it could also mean like take time out to go bury yourself so that you are able to resurrect your good qualities and leave what? Your bad qualities in the ground. Sallu alayhim janaza. So it could also mean that he's saying, look, take time out for introspection. Like Suhaib, look into your life and see what you need to allow to die from you. And obviously, if something goes, the laws of nature say, then something has to what? Something has to step in its place. Something will ripen. Something will grow. Something will replace. So bury yourself could mean literally like a metaphorical janaza on my bad qualities. So what he's getting at is to improve the ahwal, get into some introspection. Get into some time alone. He's going to build on this in a second, but he's hitting it hard now just to freak people out, which he does in Arabic a lot. أدفن وجودك في أرض خمول فما نبت مما لم يدفن ولا يتم نتائجه. So ask yourself, like, are people as interested in working on their skill set, improving themselves, develop themselves spiritually, as they are for the quick embrace of attention? That's what he's getting at. So don't be so out there that you neglect yourself. And we'll take 2 more and we'll stop. He says, ما نفع القلب مثل عزلة. Nothing benefits the heart like solace, isolation, عزلة. يدخل بها ميدان فكرة. Ya Allah. I don't know how to translate this, man. He says, I'm going to do my best. He says, there's nothing more beneficial for the heart than a little. He didn't say al-uzla. If you understand Arabic, he said uzlatun. Uzlatun means a little isolation. If he said ma nafa al-qalba mithla al-uzlu, then it would mean like always be by yourself. But when he says uzlatun with tanween, the indefinite means a little bit. So it's like he's explaining how do I bury myself? Like, what do you mean bury myself in a distant land? What the heck does that mean, man? Because the nafs don't like that stuff. The nafs doesn't like it. So the nafs will be like, what? Bury myself in a distant land? So he brings the balance and he says, ma nafa'a, nothing brings benefit. Al-qalba mithlu uzlatin. He say mithlu al-uzla. He didn't say that nothing benefits the heart like constant isolation. He said a little. What is the practice of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that would equate to like a little isolation? A tahajjud. What about in the daytime? What would he do? What's the act he would do that was between him only and Allah? Even though he's with the people. And you do it too once a year. Fasting. Nobody knows you're fasting. You might not be fasting. Nobody will know. But here what he means is taking time out for that introspection. Whether it's a tahajjud, whether dua, maybe like you're working all day long. It's hard. Like we all get home, we're exhausted. So maybe just a dua for like a few seconds. That's why I love he said uzlatun. Because like a lot of us, it's hard, man. Al-uzla will create more stress. So can I get a little in? You can get a little in. Maybe I get home, had to cook the ramen, you know what I'm saying? Before I jump on Netflix or whatever I gotta do, grade papers, pray, maghrib, and sit and make dua for a few minutes. Alhamdulillah. That's my uzla. And sometimes like you may only have a few moments to do something, but then like Allah puts barak in it for you. Because you're sincere, subhanAllah. Like how many people 1 minute is equal to 1,000 years of someone else's life because of their ikhlas, like their sincerity, their hunger for Allah. So he said nothing is more beneficial to the heart than that type of isolation. يدخل بها ميدان فكرة. The word, ميدان tahrir. Maidan is like a square, like where the Egyptian liberation happened, the real liberation, right? So those were places in ancient times where a lot of things happened. You could walk around, see the suq, see stuff. So he said, like, the best isolation is the one where you enter into the maidan of introspection. It's like you walk around, you see yourself. You look into yourself and your relationship with Allah. What he's going to talk about next, inshallah, as we finish, is the etiquette of this. And this part is a little tough. And I'm just going to read it and we'll explain it next time. Because the goal of that is not to be, isolation isn't the goal. The goal of being alone with Allah is to grow, to ripen, to get better, to draw nearer to Allah, to increase my relationship with Allah, to become a better person. So he says, كيف يشرق القلب صور الأكوان منطبعة في مرآته. Ya Allah. He said, how can the light of God shine into a heart? I'm going to explain it as an image. He's saying the heart is like a mirror, and your dunya is all that you can see in this reflection. Like if I look in the mirror, I can't even see myself. So all I see in it is like things which are not that important. And it's filled the mirror. He's like, how can the light of Allah shine into that mirror? That's the heart. So the first thing he's saying is if we want to sit down and be alone with Allah, clear your heart. Windex that joint. Take some time to empty. Right? Take some time to pull things out. كيف يشرق القلب. How can a heart be illuminated? صور أكوان منطبعة في مرآته. How can the heart reflect God if the mirror is full with the reflection of the world? So like, clean it as best we can. كيف يرحل إلى الله وهو مكبل بشهواته. He says, and how can someone travel to God when they are in bondage to their desires? So the second is to pull away from desires. Shahawat means bad stuff. كيف يطمع أن يدخل حضرة الله وهو لم يتطهر من جنابات غفلاته. And how can someone hope that they will be in a relationship with Allah when they have not purified themselves from the najis of their negligence? So like he's saying negligence is like janaba. It's filthy. So I have to be like awake. So in my introspection, so it's not just like I'm alone, because like we've ever been on itikaf or something. Like one time, I'll give a good story. One time I was making tawaf. I was in Mecca. I was making tawaf. I went to tawaf by myself. I went to the Umrah by myself. Best Umrah I ever made in my life. It's amazing, Subhana. Except with my wife after I got married. Hold on. But the second one. So I was there, right? And I was like, nobody knows me. This is great. We get tawaf, man. And this brother came to me. He's like, man, what you think about the Celtics, bro? He's like, give me salams, and he started asking about the Celtics, the greatest basketball team in the history of humanity. So then I said, like, you don't want to be rude to people, right? I was like, yeah, they're doing well, man. And then he just kept going. I was like, hey, like, bro, like, I love you, bro. I don't know how to say this, man, but like, that's the Kaaba. I'm not trying to talk about Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, dude. That's the Kaaba, man. And he was like, yeah, I'm so sorry. I was like, no, it's okay, but like, I'm trying not to think about that stuff. right? I was like, I appreciate the fact that you're strong enough that you can do it. God bless you. But if you start making me think about the big three, I'm not gonna think about the three for Maghrib. So like, that's what he's saying. He's saying it's not sufficient alone enough to be alone, but how are you alone? So the first is like when I walk into that situation with God, if my mind is all over the place, I can pull out. It's okay, go do something else, and make sure that that light can shine on that mirror. Number two, if I'm like steeped in thinking about things which are sinful, right, to the point that I'm alone, but I'm thinking about sin, then how am I gonna enter into that situation? Or the third is if I'm in the situation where I'm alone, because being alone isn't the issue. How am I alone? So if I'm alone and all I'm thinking about is everything but God, then how's it gonna work? It's not gonna work. So he's saying be careful of these three things. When you spend time by yourself with God, make sure that the mirror, the light can shine in it. Make sure that you're not thinking about sin. And number three is make sure that you're thinking about God. You're thinking about faith. You're thinking about your relationship with him. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the last, and we'll stop inshallah. He says, أم كيف يرجو أن يفهم دقائق الأسرار ولم يتب من هفواته يا Allah. And how can someone hope to understand the secrets of the dunya when they haven't repented from the sins they fell into in this dunya? So tawbah. So the fourth is like, before I go into this kind of situation where maybe I'm spending some time making dua, making dhikr, thinking about Allah, I should repent. I should clean the mirror. I should make sure I'm focused. And then I should make sure also that like I am not thinking about sins. So what he did is he showed us how to bury ourselves, basically. Because people are like, how do I adfin wujuda? Kayfa adfin wujudi? How do I experience this isolation? Like, what are the adab? What are the etiquettes? So he's saying, don't be busy. Don't be negligent. Don't be caught up in sin. And before you start, make tawbah. Repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next time, inshallah, as we finish, we have, wow, only two more, alhamdulillah, before we finish to 15. It'll be good, inshallah. Any questions before we break out? Yes, sir.
So the point you just made about introspection, I think, relates to the point you made earlier about balance. What would you say to somebody who says that balance is very important, and everyone says that obviously being a righteous Muslim, being a religious person doesn't mean that you become a monk and that you give up the dunya.
Right.
But every other person you see who has attained a lot of material wealth or worldly success seems to either increase in sin or go further from Allah and just kind of become less righteous, so to say.
You know, man, I have a good friend, man. He's a multimillionaire. He's not that good a friend, because then I would be a multimillionaire. But we grew up together, right? I say something about Muslims that are successful. I've noticed there's two kinds or three kinds. But there are a lot of really very well-off Muslims that are just on the deal about it. There's people come here, man. This one brother comes here. He's not here now, so I can say the story. He's like, man, you should come over for chai. I was like, bet. You know, usually when you think you're going for chai, it's like Pakistani tea. It's going to be like on the stove, you know what I mean, with doodh patti. It's going to be like... So we go to his house. I'm not going to say where it is, but it's kind of by Union Square. And it has more than 3 rooms. You know what I mean? Most of us, we live in New York, we're used to going like this, at least once a day, especially if you're married, in your own house. We get in the elevator. Bro, the elevator is his front door, bro. Like, it opens up, and I'm like, he's like, no, this is my crib, man. I was like, whoa, okay, dang, dude. But he does a lot of good. But he's not out there. Like, he's not out there like that. So I think there are, Mansa Musa, richest person in history, you know, goes through Cairo, changes the entire economic system because of the gold he brought. So Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was asked, can a successful person be righteous? He said, yeah, as long as it's in their hand, not in their hearts. I think the challenge is within the current international environment and how it's structured and how financial access and entry is oftentimes rooted with being in places of vice. Right? That's the challenge. So wealth may not be the issue, it's what comes with it. So I think that's why we need to create support groups for Muslims that are like financially successful. There should be like people that are there for each other. Just like we have support groups for other people, we all need ministry. So I say sometimes the Muslim community doesn't think, like, we don't even have programs for divorcees, man. You know what I mean? Let alone like people that are successful. So I've seen Muslims that have done it, but I would say there's like 2 or 3 things. Number one is they're strong, driven people. Like they're not, like if you look at Safir Rabna, he's running for Congress in Washington, D.C. area. Like he's a very, very he's a real estate developer in D.C. He and a bunch of brothers. They're gonna do it halal, not gonna do haram. They're gonna, they have certain principles that they just stuck to, and Allah bless them. Number 2 is a strong family unit. So they have strong family relations. Number 3, oftentimes I've noticed they do it with a group of guys. So Harun is there. You know, Harun is there to strengthen you in front of Pharaoh. And the 4th is they have I've seen this with women too, the lady out in the Bay Area. They have a passion for impacting the world in a very good way. That doesn't change. So that's like what, the wealth is not what drives them. It's healing a fractured world, you know? No problem. Like Imam Ghazali said, if we want to, one of the teachers said, if we want to chastise wealthy people, then who built the madrasa? It's like everyone has a part to play. I gave a khutbah about influencers. Someone said, these influencers are all evil. I was like, well, this influencer, she just provided water for 25,000 people in freaking Sri Lanka, bro. I was like, how much water have you given somebody today? He's like, no. I was like, what are you saying? Like, you don't always have to see the negative. What the Nabi said, if the food tastes bad and you have an infection in your mouth, don't blame the chef. And if you have pink eye, don't blame the Met. Like, don't go to the Met and be like, this is the worst art exhibit I've ever seen in my life. You got an infection in your eye, man. It means it's how you see things. And we are a community that needs to be inspired of its potential, not destroyed because of its failures. We're already under siege, right? You see young people, encourage them, alhamdulillah. Any other questions before we? Barakallahu feekum, wa jazakallahu khairan, wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Is James here anywhere?